Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of The Draw Step. We got another deck build coming in for you real quick, and today we are working with a commander that is going to turn your junk into treasure and also tell your friends no. The last part is mostly just because I like telling my friends no. Alright, who are we working with? Last time we did a mono red commander. Today we are working with a mono blue commander, Jalira, anyway, Master Polymorphist. This is what she looks like, and she costs 4 mana. She's a 2/2, and you can pay 3 mana, tap her, then sacrifice another creature, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-legendary creature card, put that card onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's a little bit of a more controlled chaos warp. I think is the easiest way to think about it. You are sacrificing one of your creatures, so you are losing something, but then you get a flip through the top of your library until you find a non-legendary creature. So what we're going to try to do with this is, again, take a bunch of token creatures or creatures that we don't care about dying and turn them into some big, beefy boys. Cool. Starting things off, we'll work through our artifacts. We have Ever-Flowing Chalice, which it can be a good ramp piece, especially as time goes on. There's more that you can put into that X spell to be able to ramp for more. A Soul Ring, which again, I feel like every deck should have a Soul Ring. An Arcane Signet, and last but not least, Wayfarer's Bauble for our ramp package to make sure we have that mana to get out our commander and tap her ability. Then we have Blade of Shared Souls. It's 3 mana. When it enters, it creates a 2/2 red rebel, and it says whenever it becomes attached to a creature, for as long as Blade of Shared Souls remains attached to it, you may have that creature become a copy of another target creature you control, which can be a strong ability in and of itself, but it also, on top of that, is creating that 2/2 creature. So you're getting a strong ability, and you're getting a body that you could potentially sacrifice. Next, Mimic Vat for 3 mana. It has imprint. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you may exile that card. If you do, return each other card exiled with Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyard. And then you can pay 3, tap, create a token that's a copy of a card exiled with Mimic Vat. It gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. This can be so powerful and so broken, because what we can do is use our commander to sacrifice a creature. Really, we can even sacrifice a good creature, a creature that we really like. And then each turn, we can tap this, create a token of that creature. It can, swing into combat, or maybe it just has a really strong ETB that we really care about. And then before the end of our turn, we tap our commander, we sacrifice it because we're going to have to get rid of that token anyway. And now we get value from the top of our library by getting another creature into play for free. So that is very strong with the Mimic Vat. And then as far as telling our opponents no, we have Dampening Sphere for 2 mana. It says that if a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces 1 colorless instead of any other type and amount. We are working with with exclusively non-basic lands. So, wow, I messed that up. With just basic lands. No non-basic lands. There is no non-basic lands in here. This is a blue deck. You really don't need a bunch of non-basic lands. So we're using nothing but islands, but our opponents will probably have a bunch of non-basics, and if any of them are trying to produce more than 1 mana, this kind of puts the kibosh on that. And then it also says each spell player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. So if somebody is in Izzet trying to do like a storm deck or something like that, this is really going to put a dampen on there. I mean, pun intended, since it's a dampening sphere. But really slow them down. And on our turns, like, yes, it will cost us more as well too, but we're not doing a ton because we're cheating a lot of our creatures into play anyway. And then last, we have Winter Orb, 2 mana, says no player may untap more than 1 land during his or her untap phase. Again, that is going to hurt us as well too. It is going to slow us down, but we're not really tapping our lands a lot except for activating our commander's ability. Plus we have like Everflowing Chalice, Soul Ring, we have some mana rocks in there, so that's not the end of the world to us. We can still get massive creatures into play, and it'll be more so harmful to our opponents. As far as lands, and again, we already touched on this, for the mana base, we are just using strictly islands, just basic lands, get them, throw them in the deck, you're good to go. I have 1 Plainswalker in this deck. She said, Cosmina. Spells your opponents cast that target a creature or planeswalker you control cost 2 more to cast. Basically, it's giving your entire board, well, not your entire board, all of your creatures, all the ones that we really care about, ward 2, which is kind of nice. And again, tells your opponents no. And then starts with 5 loyalty counters. It does not have a way of going up unless you proliferate, but there really isn't much of that in this deck. So you really got the 5. And you can do -2, create a 2/2 blue wizard creature token, draw a card, then discard a card. So kind of a rummaging effect. And on top of that, it is creating more creature fodder for you. So for 4 mana, you're getting 2 2/2 creatures that you can sacrifice to get something better and give your creatures ward 2. So that's not bad value right there. For enchantments, we have Propaganda. Each turn, each creature cannot attack you unless its controller pays an additional 2 for that creature. So kind of, there's another one in white. White is really the more popular one for this ability as far as taxing your opponents for attacking you. But again, this deck, on top of some of the disgusting pieces that we're going to be bringing out, which we will get into later, this deck has a lot of you're not attacking me. Back to basics. For 3 mana, non-basic lands don't untap during their controller's untap step. Again, this is very one-sided. We're not using non-basic lands. So this doesn't hurt us at all, but our opponents probably going to mess up their plan quite a bit. Thopter Spy Network for 4 mana. At the start of your turn, if you have an artifact, you get a 1/1 creature. There is also, if an artifact creature deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. That's cool. Main thing is that each turn, we're getting that 1/1 Thopter, which we can then turn around, sacrifice, get something big off the top of our library. And then last but not least, for enchantments, we have Freed from the Real. For 3 mana, you can enchant creature and then either pay 1 to tap it or pay 1 to untap it. There's so many... I dropped it. There are so many different things that card can combo with. This deck, really any deck, anything that has a tap ability, you can probably bust it with a Freed from the Real. But for this case, we're mostly just using it on our commander so we can untap her and then tap her again to sacrifice, get something else big and scary off of our library. Then for our instants and sorceries, we have a ton of counter spells in here. I'm just going to preface it with that. My friends really don't even let me play this deck anymore because a lot of the deck, or a lot of the time with the deck, you're mostly just sitting there going, no, you're not going to do that. Sorry, not happening. Starting off, flip the switch, 3 mana, counter target spell unless its controller pays 4. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. So it's a 3 mana counter spell, which is a little pricey. However, a lot of times they're not going to pay that for. I mean, they could, but there's a pretty hefty tax. so they're probably not going to pay the 4, and then we also get the 2/2 black zombie creature token. So when you think about it, you're really paying the normal 2 that you would for a counter spell, and then for 1 additional mana, you're also getting a creature fodder, that 2/2 that you can use to sacrifice later. So that's not terrible value. See Beyond, pay 2 mana, draw 2 cards, and shuffle a card from your hand into your library. This can be a way where if you have a creature that you want to cheat out later, but you accidentally drew into it, you can then, using that, shuffle it back into your library so you don't have to pay its outrageous mana cost. You can just cheat it out for 3 mana and a sacrifice token. So that can be solid. Treason of Isengard, 3 mana, put up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. That can be nice. A lot of spells that we could potentially want to recur and use again. But then the other big thing is it has amass orcs too. It doesn't really matter. It creates a 2/2. We're not amassing more orcs. We just want that 2/2 creature. We're going to sacrifice it, get rid of it, move on. Counterspell. Everybody knows what it does. Launch Mishap for 3 mana, counter target creature or Plainswalker spell, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. So again, it's a 3 mana counter spell, but for that 1 extra mana, you're getting a creature fodder. Russian Knowledge, pay 5, draw cards equal to highest converted mana cost among permanents you control. As you guys are going to see here later, we have a lot of high mana creatures in this deck, so that could potentially draw you an absurd amount of cards. Callous Dismissal for 2 mana, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand and amass 1. So if either you're wanting to bounce something of yours or an opponent has a big giant creature that they're about to swing on you with, you can send that back to their hand, set them back a little bit, and get that 1/1. Stolen by the Fae, 2 blue and X. Return target creature with converted mana cost X to its owner's hand. You create X 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying. So almost like the last one, except even better, really, because it's got that bounce effect as well as creating all of those 1/1s. So you're going, depending on how much mana you put into that, you're going to be set up really well for quite a few turns to come of having creature fodder to be able to sacrifice off. We want to have that in place as quickly as possible. We want that creature fodder around and ready to go by the time we have our commander out, so we can start using that ability and getting the good stuff into play. Keep Safe, 2 mana counterspell and drawing a card. Engulf the Shore, 4 mana, return to their owner's hands all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands you control. You have nothing but islands. You're probably going to have a lot of islands in play. This is most likely a board wipe in a sense. Sending it to your hand, not really to the graveyard. Whelming Wave, 4 mana, return all creatures to their owner's hands except for krakens, leviathans, octopuses, and serpents. We actually have a decent amount of those particular creatures in our library, so it's going to hurt our opponents a lot more than it's going to hurt us. Aether Gale, 5 mana, return 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hand. That can be a very strong effect. Negate, another counter spell. Curse of the Swine, 2 and an X. Exile X target creatures for each creature exiled this way. As controller creates a 2/2 green boar creature token. So this, you have a couple different ways you can go with it. You could even target some of your own stuff if you want to get that 2/2 boar. But blue doesn't have a lot of great exile pieces, so that's a way to take out some of your opponent's worst stuff and just leave them with a boar instead. Faded Infatuation, 3 mana, put a token on the battlefield that's a copy of target creature you control. If it's your turn, scry 2. Scrying is a very strong effect in this deck because it's allowing us to see and alter the order of the top of our library, so we know what creatures are going to be coming up when we trigger our commander's ability, and hopefully we can get the best one to hit and get that onto the battlefield. Startle, 2 mana, target creature gets -2/-0 until end of turn. Create a 2/2 black zombie and draw a card. Really all we care about is getting that creature fodder and getting a card for 2 mana. That's not a bad deal. Polymorph, 4 mana. It says a lot of words. It's got really old text, at least this particular copy of it. Basically, it's a blue Chaos Warp. That's the easiest way of looking at it. Expropriate for 9 mana. This is really kind of a late game play, but starting with you, each player votes for time or money. For each time vote, you take an extra turn after this one. Bare minimum, you're most likely gonna get at least 1 extra turn out of this, but on the other hand, if they vote for money, choose a permanent owned by the voter and gain control of it, then you exile this. So unfortunately, there's no way to, bring it back or anything like that. But you can either get some stuff or get extra turns. Not bad. Flow of Knowledge, 5 mana, draw a card for each island you control, then discard 2 cards. Again, you have a lot of islands in place. You're going to draw quite a few cards, and then you'll just have to discard the 2. Rewind, counter target spell, untap up to 4 lands, so good counter spell there, and then you get the mana back that you spent on it. It is kind of pricey as far as counter spells go, but it gets you your mana back. Geist Snatch, 4 mana, counter target spell, put a 1/1 blue spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Again, speaking of pricey counter spells, this one has 2 mana, 2 extra mana to get that 1/1 creature. Not great, but creature fodder. Sauron's Trickery, 3 mana, counter target spell, and then Amass Orcs 1. So counter spell, get a 1/1 creature for 1 extra mana. Invoke the Winds, 5 mana, 1 and 4 blues. So this is very restrictive for most decks, but in a mono blue deck, not going to be a problem. Gain control of target artifact or creature, untap it. Now, ironically enough, we can use this on our commander as well too. If we really have that much mana sitting around and nothing better to do with it, we could just use it as a very expensive untap spell. I would not recommend that, but certainly an avenue you can go. And then last but not least, for our instants and sorceries, we have Stolen Identity, 6 mana, create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature. And then Cipher. You may exile this spell card, encode it on a creature you control. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, its controller may cast a copy of the encoded card without paying its mana cost. So this is really strong. It creates creature fodder, but then also every time you're smacking someone, you get more creature fodder out of that deal. That is very nice. I have a couple legendary creatures in the deck that I want to note really quickly. Again, your commander does specify that has to be a non-legendary creature, so your commander cannot cheat out any of these creatures. It only is going to be able to cheat out the others. So, really quickly, we have, how do you pronounce it? The Lost, 2 mana. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. If it entered from your library, which it's most likely not going to be unless you play it from the top, draw 2 cards instead. And when it becomes target of a spell, shuffle it into its owner's library. Cool. Card draw for 2 mana, really. Then we have Barrel Chief of Compliance. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, so that can be nice. Even like that Rewind that we were talking about earlier, which is 4 mana, but then you get untapped 4 lands. If you have Barrel, how do you pronounce him? If you have him out, then it only is costing you 3 mana to cast, and you're getting 4 lands. So you're actually netting mana by playing a counterspell, which is kind of cool. Whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So again, kind of getting to go through your cards there just for telling your opponents to F off. Love it. Errant Street Artist, 1 mana, Flash, Defender, Haste, a 0/3. Pay 2, tap, copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. You may choose new targets for the copy. So, copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. These creatures entering the battlefield were not casting them. There's a couple different ways really, but again, you're for 2 mana, you are getting to double the value of those spells as they enter the battlefield. Iser Wardwing Familiar, for 2 mana to 1/3 with flying. Spells your opponents cast at target 1 or more commanders you control, costs 3 more to cast. This is a little bit of flying, which is nice to have in the deck, but then it's giving your commander Ward 3. Your opponents are going to want to destroy your commander as soon as they realize the absolute diabolical levels of tax fraud you're committing with your commander. They're going to want to try and get rid of it. So having that having that ward 3 isn't huge, but it does make it a little bit harder for our opponents to take out our commander. Now, this last one, this is having this in the deck is a bit of a, it's not a bit, it's a massively a rude move, but what can I say? Jin-Gitaxias, Core Augur. Yeah. At the beginning of each end step, draw 7 cards. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. What do they do? What do they do? They can't do anything. They're not allowed to have a hand anymore, and you are getting 7 extra cards. That's asinine. That's ridiculous. But great for us. All right. Finishing this off, we have our creatures that we can cheat out with our commander. First few doesn't really matter about cheating them out, but Solemn Golem dude. When he enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put that card on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Nice little ramp piece that we can use in blue because blue is tough to ramp. And then when it dies, you may draw a card. So this can actually be nice to use as creature fodder. Get it out, get that ramp, and then sacrifice it to trigger your commander's ability and get something better. Similar to that would be Meteor Golem. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. So you get that ability, use it, and then sack it to get something better. Now we're moving into the better stuff. All right, 7 mana, Pursued Whale. It's an 8/8. And it says when it enters the battlefield, each opponent creates a 1/1 red pirate creature token. With this, creature can't block. And creatures you control attack each combat if able. Spells your opponents cast at target Pursued Whale costs 3 more to cast. So it's an 8/8 that has Ward 3 basically, and it gives all of your opponent's creatures that, or a 1/1 token that goads all of their creatures, so they're going to have to start swinging at each other. Colossal Whale for 7 mana, a 5/5 with Island Walk, which says that this creature can't be blocked as long as defending player controls an island. Not guaranteed to work, but a lot of times, I mean, blue is a fairly common color in Commander, so if they have some islands out, they're cooked, they're getting smacked with a 5/5. And whenever it attacks, you may exile target creature defending player controls until Colossal Whale leaves the battlefield, so you are just slowly taking out their stuff every time you attack with that whale. Tidespout Tyrant. 8 mana, a 5/5 with flying. Whenever you play a spell, return target permanent to its owner's hand. This is ridiculous. This is just, it's not fair. It's not nice. It's not great for anyone. Well, it's great for you. I take that back. It is very, very great for you. It is going to basically allow you all those times that you're playing those counter spells or, you know, the cheap fodder pieces to get out, you're now bouncing stuff back to your opponent's hands. And again, it says target permanent to its owner's hands. You could be a real mean person with that and bounce their lands back to their hands, and then they're just cooked. They can't do anything. Phyrexian Ingester, 7 mana for a 3/3, but when it enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-token creature. It gets +X/+Y, where X to exile creature's power and Y is its toughness, so this could become a very massive creature. Scourge of Fleet, 7 mana for a 6/6, and when it enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponent controls with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. So again, one-sided board wipe right there. Depending on how soon you get that out, you're going to have a lot of islands in play, so you're probably going to be able to bounce pretty much everything on your opponent's board. 7 mana Battle Sphere. When it enters the battlefield, you get 4 1/1s. I mean, this is a decent attacker if you really want to, attacker or blocker, but really the big thing is it's getting you those 4 1/1s. You're getting that creature fodder to be able to sacrifice. Wonder. As long as it is in your graveyard and you control an island, creatures you control have flying. So this is one where you don't even mind sacrificing it. You really want to get it sacrificing into your graveyard so that all of your creatures have flying. Speaking of your creatures having flying, 6 mana for Archetype of Imagination. Creatures you control have flying. Creatures your opponents control lose flying and can't have or gain flying. This is sick. This is diabolical. This means that your opponents could have a freaking dragon deck sitting there that you just clip their wings. They're walking. They're taking the bus. They're not doing crap. And now suddenly your whales are flying over your head. Why? Because Wizards of the Coast logic. That's why. Lord of Change. 6/6 with flying and ward. When it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. Cool. You're getting that card draw. You're getting a 6/6 flyer. You're getting a unstoppable beat stick with that thing. Tolarian Kraken for 6 mana. It's a 4/6, and whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. When you do, you may tap or untap target creature. Would be a pretty solid ability to untap your commander to be able to use its ability again, or you could shut down your opponent's board. Inkwell Leviathan, 9 mana, 7/11 with Island Walk, which we've been over, Trample, and Shroud. Can't be the target of spells or abilities, so it is going to be ridiculously difficult for your opponents to take care of this 7/11, which is going to potentially be unblockable, or at the very least still punching through a bunch of damage. Guile, 6 mana. Guile can't be blocked except for 3 or more creatures, which is a 6/6, so even if they do block with 3 creatures, you'll probably kill several of them. If a spell or ability you control would counter a spell, instead exile that spell and you may play the card without paying its mana cost. When Guile is put into a graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. So this bad boy, even if it gets killed, it's just going to get sent right back to your library and your commander could later cheat it out again. But you're now getting that extra ability with all of those counter spells that we're running. You are not just countering them anymore, but you're getting that value for yourself. So that trust me, do that once or twice. Hit an opponent's, like, I don't know, they try laying an Eldrazi, you hit it with a 2 mana counterspell, and now you have an Eldrazi. Oof, they're not going to be your friend for much longer. Deep Sea Kraken, 10 mana for a 6/6, but it also has Suspend. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you can remove a time counter. So you could pay this for, or play this for a lot less. You could play it for 3 mana, but it can't be blocked. So basically, it's an unblockable 6/6. Stormtide Leviathan, 8 mana for an 8/8 with Island Walk. All lands are islands in addition to other types. Creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. So, again, we have several Leviathans, we have several creatures with flying, Island Walk, whatever. Our creatures will be able to attack, cool, not a problem. But all of our opponent's lands are now islands. So we're getting through regardless. We are attacking them, we're smacking them in the face. They can't stop it, they can't block it. Get wrecked. You'll remember earlier, a little bit of foreshadowing took place where I mentioned that whole Eldrazi thing. Yeah, we got some of those in here too. Artisan of Kozilek, 9 mana, 10/9 with Annihilator 2. And when you cast a spell, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Technically speaking, using our commander's ability is not casting, so we would not get that ability. But if we choose to just pay this at mana value, we do get something back from our graveyard to the battlefield. But again, it's a 10/9 with Annihilator 2. You're kicking butt at that point. Speaking of Annihilator 2, we have Ulamog's Crusher, 8 mana for an 8/8. It attacks each combat if able, and it also has Annihilator 2. And then we have Eldrazi Devastator, 8 mana for an 8/9 with Trample. Definitely not the strongest out of all of them. And Bane of Balaged, whatever. 7 mana for a 7/5. When it attacks, defending player exiles 2 permanents he or she controls. So instead of just Annihilator, it's Exilator, which is very, very, very grody. And last but not least, we have Void Winnower. It's a 9 mana, 11/9 Eldrazi. Your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana costs, and your opponents can't block with creatures with even converted mana costs. This can just shut down a lot of stuff for your opponents. So again, This whole deck is taking just these crappy tokens that nobody cares about, turns them into freaking Eldrazi or flying whales. This is going to be the sort of deck that you will put it together. Your opponents will see the commander and think, okay, 3 mana, sacrifice a creature, doesn't sound that great. And then you're going to punch them over and over, and they're not going to want to play with you anymore. They're probably not going to want to be your friend anymore. Bare minimum, they're not going to let you play this deck for very long. But maybe your friends are just as psychotic as my friends and continue to put up with your shenanigans anyway. And if that's the case, then boy howdy do I have even more decks for you to build. You're going to want to go look at the video that's going to pop up at the end of this. Linked, it's going to be another great deck build with another nasty deck that's going to defeat all your opponents. But that being said, I hope you liked this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like, hit the bell notification so you see when we drop new deck reviews, typically every Friday. We also got live streams on Saturday. And let me know, is there anything you would tweak about this deck? Is there any different creatures you would put in, different ways you would go about building this deck? I would love to hear from you guys. That being said, I love y'all. See you next time.